36 notches, 36 lives taken by one individual, a man the Union Army named the Phantom of Tennessee. But what transformed a 57-year-old tobacco grower into the most deadly sniper of the Civil War? And for what reason has his narrative been so determinedly forgotten by history? This is not a story of grand battles or opposing armies. This is the genuine account of Jack Hinson, a man who chose not to choose a side until the conflict chose for him. Imagine this: a father who sees Union soldiers impale his son's severed heads upon his own property's fence. A longtime neighbor gunned down because of an old resentment. A marksman so terrifying, commanding generals pledged a bounty of $300 in gold, a sum sufficient to purchase an entire town just for his capture. Still, you will not see his name in any history book. This evening, we bring the unvarnished truth to light: how an impartial farmer outperformed entire Union sniper corps, how he led Confederate icon Nathan Bedford Forrest to destroy a vast empire of Union provisions, and how the United States Army pursued a specter for 2 full years, a ghost who was familiar with every corner of the land between the rivers, for the simple reason that it was his home. Was he a heroic figure, a terrorist, or merely a shattered man who measured his sorrow by each scar from a bullet? Keep watching, as the facts you will soon discover will reshape all your assumptions about the Civil War's hidden stories. When Jack Hinson first built his extensive tobacco farm across the rich bottomlands of Stewart County, Tennessee, he likely never conceived that his home would one day become the center of a vicious struggle between the Union and the Confederacy. The area, which residents later called the land between the rivers, for its location nestled between the Cumberland and Tennessee rivers, turned into a strategic game board for military leaders. Its sharp bluffs provided natural defensive positions, and its collection of successful farms offered limitless resources for troops. However, when Tennessee seceded to the Confederacy in 1861, Hinson maintained a precarious neutrality, divided between his Southern heritage and a realist's wish to safeguard his family and estate. Hinson's property, like others nearby, had been shaped from the wilderness through generations of work by enslaved people. But by the time the war began, he had made the difficult choice to emancipate the individuals he enslaved, a decision that caused his neighbors to gossip. Many who were freed elected to remain on his land as paid workers, a complex dynamic that hinted at both continued reliance and a brittle, newfound trust. This fragile peace was destroyed when 2 of Hinson's sons, caught in the passion of Southern rebellion, enlisted with Confederate guerrilla fighters. These irregular bands, made up of local woodsmen, homesteaders, and fervent patriots, fought a clandestine campaign against the Union forces occupying their home, leveraging their deep familiarity with wilderness paths to execute ruthless surprise attacks. Union leadership, trained for conventional warfare, became progressively unnerved by these guerrilla tactics. Their inexperienced soldiers, often in their first engagement, were startled by every sudden noise, their mounting fear frequently escalating into severe retaliation against the local populace. It is at this point that Hinson's narrative reaches its most tragic chapter. Local accounts passed down through generations describe Union soldiers raiding the Hinson property in 1862, purportedly detaining 2 additional sons under accusations of being guerrilla fighters. The boys, according to the lore, were killed without a trial, and their heads were displayed on the farm's gateposts as a grim message to others. Yet, as with numerous stories from this era, the line between verified event and folklore is indistinct. Official Army documents do not record this specific brutality, causing debate among experts. Did this terrible event serve as the catalyst that changed a neutral farmer into the mythic Confederate marksman known as Old Jack? Or was Hinson's neutrality ever really genuine, perhaps a clever disguise to collect information on the Union from the officers he was compelled to host? Doubters point out that Hinson's subsequent operations, a lethal sniper war targeting Union boats, would have needed specialized, high-quality rifles not typically held by a civilian agriculturist. This supports conjectures that he was secretly supplied by Confederate leadership, who foresaw the area's crucial importance. Some historians contend that the agony of losing his sons, whether in combat or to purported war crimes, reflects the ordeal of many Southern households, common citizens driven to extremism by the harsh realities of military subjugation. What remains incontestable is that Hinson's life story embodies the war's destructive impact on society, where familiar landscapes were transformed into both refuge and killing ground, and staying neutral frequently became an unattainable hope. Hinson's vast farm, situated in the rich curves of the Tennessee River, once briefly hosted an involuntary visitor, Union General Ulysses S. Grant. The general's aides took over the estate for their operations during the 1862 advance into the territory, their clean boots scuffing the floors Hinson had built himself. This hostile takeover, a stark contradiction to the legacy Hinson would later forge, signaled the start of his descent. Although scholars discuss his exact reasons, the consensus is that Union military policies were the anvil upon which his fury was forged. Soldiers ransacked plantations under official orders, taking stored grain and killing livestock, condemning families to face starvation in the coming cold months. Even the Union's principal goal of emancipation was tarnished in practice. Troops liberated enslaved individuals only to promptly conscript them into back-breaking labor battalions, exchanging one form of master for another. The ultimate humiliation occurred when Union soldiers set fire to Hinson's home, the inferno consuming a lifetime of work in just a few hours. As his wife held their smallest child tightly, Hinson observed the smoke rising where his barn had been, a man who had constructed his world with hard work, now possessing nothing but the rifle he had concealed in a farming tool. Neighbors murmured that he would remain utterly still for hours, muttering, "A man is unable to kneel after they burn out his knees." His retribution started with a neighbor, a Swiss immigrant whom Hinson believed had informed on Confederate supporters to Union soldiers. Their long-standing conflict, which had begun with an argument over a property line in '58, came to a violent head on New Year's Eve, 1862. Hinson followed his target to a creek bed covered in frost, firing a single shot from his Kentucky long rifle. The sound reverberated through the valleys where they had fished as children, a private battle existing inside the larger national struggle. Now, fully aligned with the Confederate guerrillas, Hinson became a phantom haunting the waterways. He committed to memory every slow curve of the Tennessee River where Union vessels lost speed, their paddle wheels churning the water. Concealed within the limestone cliffs, he would wait patiently for days for a uniformed officer to appear on deck. His .50 caliber rifle, named Old Vengeance, delivered a judgment that was absolute, each fatal shot commemorated by a new notch carved into the weapon's walnut stock. Union soldiers exchanged frightened stories of a ghost who could fire bullets on a curved path, though the reality was more straightforward. Hinson possessed an intimate knowledge of every current and riverside tree from a lifetime spent on these banks. The official tally reached 36 by the conflict's conclusion, though seasoned old soldiers in country taverns insisted the true number was over 100. His fame culminated when he led Nathan Bedford Forrest's cavalry along hidden paths to destroy the Union supply base at Johnsonville in 1864. While fire consumed vast stockpiles of Union food and ammunition, Hinson watched from a distance, a planter turned saboteur, witnessing his foe's strength turn to ash. Union generals posted a $300 gold bounty for his capture, a fortune that attracted every fortune hunter and opportunist. But Hinson evaded them all, on one occasion surviving for 3 days almost entirely underwater in a cypress swamp, using a hollow plant stem to breathe while his pursuers combed the banks. The end of the war brought him no peace. His son Robert, who had commanded partisan raids under his father's influence, was killed in a Union trap just weeks before the war ended. 2 of his daughters died in a cold makeshift shelter, their illnesses growing more severe with every freezing morning. Hinson lay them to rest near the blackened ruins of his home, using smooth stones from the river to mark their plots. The newly reunited country had no place for his history. Post-war Tennessee wanted narratives of unity, not a skeletal widower who had once shot Union officers as if they were practice targets. It wasn't until the 1920s that researchers rediscovered his name in old military records and the diaries of widows, igniting historical argument. Was he a justified partisan or a celebrated killer, a protector of his land or a man too broken by loss to quit? His rifle now sits in a Nashville museum, the notches eroded by the touch of countless visitors over the years. Museum docents label him the most lethal sniper of the Civil War, but longtime residents near the Tennessee still speak softly when telling the story of how the conflict transformed a farmer into an apparition, and how the desire for payback, once ignited, endures long after a home has turned to cinders. 36 notches, 36 lives. But the full cost of Jack Hinson's war can never be measured by notches in a stock. You must consider how many other family men took up a rifle to become marksmen. How many peaceful men learned to measure their retribution in spent cartridges? And what is the final price a person pays when he exchanges his farming tools for a weapon he could never bring himself to lay aside? This is the lesson you won't find in class. The Civil War was more than just great armies meeting in battle. It was communities turning on one another. It was parents mourning their sons and daughters. And for every celebrated hero recorded in our texts, there exists a Jack Hinson, a man who stepped away from his land and into the darkness, making us wonder, was his cause justified? His weapon is displayed behind glass. His legacy is buried in the soil of Tennessee. And those 36 marks, they are more than just a body count. They are unresolved debates. Debates concerning allegiance, revenge, and the terrible choices forced upon people when violence arrives at their front door.